Well, again, how is it? Well, of course, but again, do we look at that as the point of reference for our development? Where does the courage stop and the cowardice begin? You know, do we say no, and no matter what they do we continue to keep this germ alive, or do we capitulate? Do we say that we know what is truth, but because we have the threat of this entity coming down on us, do we stop what we're doing? If 20 years ago I was not doing this, or Bobby was not doing this, and we weren't saying the things that we were saying, would we be gathered here today at this particular room? Would I have 150, 200 people gathering in Atlanta? Would that be happening? No. It is there's a time when you got to say, hell no. You know, what is it that we're going to do? Are we going to live like this? No. You got to stand up and you got to do what you have to do, because that is the only way that you are going to amplify that energy that is seeking to be manifest. That you represent that energy to the fullest extent, and if you fall in the process, that energy is already encoded in the Akasha to be picked up by the next strain that will pick up that same standard and move it forward. And that is life. That is what it is. This is what we've chosen to do and to be. We chose the adversary that we wish to fight, and we know who it is that we're dealing with. And very few of us are now waking up to that fact. Some of us wake up maybe 20 years. Some of us takes 20 years to wake up. But when we do wake up, that shit scares the shit out of the adversary. He wants you to stay asleep. That is why he is genetically trying to switch you off. He knows what your genes mean to your consciousness. For instance, the genetic part of your body is not that template that you see. It is a frequency band that is in your body that is transmitting information in the form of vibrations and light. Those little pieces that you see just happen to be the fuses that are part of the circuit. But you don't see the electricity that you put into the fuse. You can't take a fuse out and look and see what the electricity is. Can you see the consciousness inside of it? No, you could change the ohms or the amperage to the fuse and get a different kind of energy, and that's all he is doing at this time. What is happening is that the energy around this manipulation of the genes is to stop the soul from unburdening itself of the past experiences that have become etched or as a signature on the soul. The soul is a template of the body's experience in the flesh. It is what you carry away as the solar, stellar, cosmic, universal energy template that is the template of your experience while you're walking around in this illusion and this delusion that you call your life. This illusion is part of the work that you chose trillions and ages, time immemorial, time unconquerable ago, to come into the quest to spiritualize matter. Matter is the part of God that is the ignorance of God. That is the part that you took on the quest with Lucifer to go and spiritualize. Your participation in matter is what creates the knowledge that God has of itself. In so doing, the body itself now has a memory engram of the experience that it calls the soul. On the soul, there are deep signatures and there are light signatures of the experiences that you had. If you could remember all of the horror that went on in the past trillion lives, you would just blow up. So for everything that you have in this body, every time you take on the flesh, there is another awakening at the time you reach 21 years of age, the third cycle of 7. At the third cycle of 7, there is a hormone is secreted in the system that triggers the awakening of the soul's energy And then that's the point where you begin to feel what you want to be and do. You become attracted to what it is that the most influential signal on the soul dictates is going to be your behavior. So here you are, this new soul, or this old soul with a new body, now getting ready to become awakened into itself, to find out what it must do to unburden past atrocities that it did to someone else, or past atrocities in your ignorance of yourself that you did to yourself or was done unto you. All of these experiences are now waking up in the form of your behavior, in the form of the way you're thinking, in the form of the way you're feeling you want to be. Now they found out that the genetic structures that form who you are, basically creating your diseases, genetically genetically transmitted diseases. These genetically transmitted diseases are evidence that the template has a programming that you are to work through in your new body. If you have somebody artificially removing that template signature that is supposed to be the guidelines for your behavior, if you come out crippled or some shit that you got to work through, basically making you think a certain way, remove that and you have systematically frozen that burden upon the soul. Because now the soul has no way of using the template signatures of the genes to unburden itself. It no longer remembers why it's here. It becomes a robotic functionary for whoever programs the genetic structure. And that is why they want your genetic structure. To trap what the soul must do as it progresses in the physical body, trap it to this reality at this particular level of development, and to use whatever's necessary as slave labor to maintain their particular position. Because those who are in charge, especially the ones who are fucking with us and manipulating us, they can't make the next quantum leap to the next dimension of reality. And because of that, they must manipulate your genetics and interface, crossbreed with you in order to reinforce their own genetics. And why do you think that commercials like Nokia for that phone call, that phone, has a white male sitting next to a black woman, and she ain't just black because she got straight hair and she's looking like she's white. She got afro puffs with African jewelry and everything. She's sitting at the other end of the couch in this loud ass party, and he says to her something that you don't hear either. He goes into his pocket and pulls out his Nokia phone, taps in her number, talks to her, and tells her, "Great cheeses, huh?" And as soon as she says, "Oh yeah," and at the end of the commercial, you see him get up from his end of the couch and go right next to her in her space, and she opens up to him. What you are looking at is the use of the black womb, who has the foundational genetics that cannot be distorted, cannot be fucked with no matter what you do. It can be suspended or put into stasis, but if it's awakened, you can't fuck with it. To maintain that particular energy in that level, you get her preoccupied with all this bullshit out here, making her believe, like Oprah, which is the clearinghouse for nigrification of black women. In so doing, a woman's attention, which is very important, a woman's attention is the most precious thing you could have. And that attention is being now specifically turned away from the archetypal duty that her body was created to do. Once you have her attention, which is something that you could get if you start messing with that archetypal nature of hers, if you fuck with it, you turn it away, and now you train it psychologically and psychospiritually to now change the coding of the genes to match what you want it to be. Now, I know this shit sounds like, what the fuck is you talking about? They say that environment dictates the person, and they're right. Not only the external environment, but the internal one as well. The internal environment that is necessary to change the genetics is what you do to condition the womb wherein the byproduct of those genetics take form. When you put the two germ cells together and you put them together at that essential level, if you have already reprogrammed the germ cell to be what you want it to be, that archetypal signature that was original from the higher dictates, the higher mandates, is now gone and has now been deferred to the lower mandates of the adversary that now rules you. The Human Genome Project is for the respecialization of humanity. It is about changing us into drones. Now, if you don't see that, then you're in trouble. Hang it up, go get a job. The problem with what we have today is our recognition factors have been put to sleep. We no longer know what is unnatural. We have become totally accommodating, and that, my beloved brothers and sisters, with no castigating, no anger intent, is what happens to a distorted feminine nature. When you take the feminine mother principle, the maternal instinct, and you pervert it so that it becomes accommodating of anything, even to the aberration of the human strain, accepting that you could have a homosexual man teach my young, impressionable Boy Scout son, that you could have him in school, teaching him dance, having him being the model for my son? No. This is an accommodation because the feminine principle would see somebody that's sick and that's the nature that nurtures. But turn that shit around and it becomes the nature that deals with any fucking distortion. Whereas the ancestors would kill off all the old and not the old but the distorted shit because they revered the old. I'm talking all that distorted shit, drowning the twins and all that. There was a reason for that shit because they knew that the twins, triplets, and these broods that these white women are coming out with, yeah, they're litters. This is a distortion. And it only happens when you artificially inseminate that sperm, that egg. So if just by an artificial act of sticking sperm cells into an egg gives you multiple births, it would tell you that multiple births is an aberration. And that the womb, and that the womb was made to accommodate one. The two makes the one because in sync with the equation of God, the one made the two. Therefore, the two is supposed to make the one. That's where you get that star above and the so-called sign of Judah. Star David, as above, so below. So you don't put litters, you don't put 8 and 12 babies inside of a womb that was meant to accommodate one. It's ridiculous. And this is the white man's desperation because he cannot procreate at the same level, speed, and efficiency as the brothers and sisters around the world, as melanin can. So what he must now do is to artificially find a way to break the threshold of his own limitations by getting to the genetic sources, by taking animals, mixing the motherfuckers together to find out, because he's part animals. He knows that he is made genetically that way. So he's going back to all these fucking animals and find out what the fuck is going on. Even David Icke, that racist motherfucker, told you that the only ways the reptilians could actually fuck, the only people that could fuck with were the white people. David Icke told you that the purebred, pale, white, blue, blonde was the only people that the so-called reptilians would fuck with. They couldn't fuck with the indigenous peoples. Why? Because the template was too complicated. They would become absorbed. Yeah, I can tell you why. They will not fuck with the original peoples. They will either destroy them or use them as fodder or miscegenate them. So, in knowing what that gene is, why that the so-called endocrine system is a behavior modification system, that is the internal dynamic where the mind of God works as a behavior modification system. That's what your endocrine system is. And it is there to make sure that that divine creation acts in accordance with its design, and only in accordance with its design.